Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm back with the Preparatory Examination 2025 Geography Paper 1. I'm going to do question 1.1 and 1.2. That is under your climate and weather topic. Under your climate and weather topic. So this is section A. I'm only going to concentrate. I'm only going to look at climate and weather, focusing on 1.1 and 1.2 only for this lesson. Okay, let me go through the question. Please, I always encourage you guys. Question interpretation is very important at this level. It's very important. You go through the questions, interpret your question correctly, and also make sure that you understand what the question is asking you to do. So question interpretation is very important. You can know the content and everything, but the moment you cannot apply what you have learned, then it becomes a challenge. So you need to make sure that you master the most important concept in as far as climate and weather is concerned. Complete the statements in column A with the options in column B. Write down only Y or Z next to the question numbers 1.1.1 to 1.1.8 in the answer book, e.g. 1.1.9 is Y. Refer to the extract of the synoptic weather map. Okay, you have been told here what you are referring to, the extract of synoptic weather map of South Africa below, and answer the question. So this is the synoptic weather map that you have here. This is the synoptic weather map that you have. So what comes to your mind when you look at this synoptic weather map is, look at what do you have at the center. You have got high pressure, which is your Kalahari high pressure. So what does this tell you? It tells you already that this is during winter, because that is when our Kalahari high is very active. This is when our Kalahari high is what? Is very active. Then you can also see here where you've got your A, it at the coast. Of course, you can see here it at the coast, which means you also have a coastal low. So that is in itself, it tells you that this is during the winter. It tells you that this is what? During the winter. So that's how you get clues on how to answer some of these questions. You just check your synoptic weather map, try to analyze it even before you start answering the question, which means due to the presence of our Kalahari high here, which is dominant, which is very active, there's too much subsidence that is taking place. Therefore, no wind or air is allowed to go above the escarpment. I think that's another interpretation that you can actually use just to analyze this. You can see in terms of wind direction or wind movement, nothing is going above the escarpment, which means during this time it's winter. Okay, the sketch shows, so your answer here will be Z. That is winter. It shows winter. That will be Z. Then the pressure cell at A is it's a low pressure. Whenever we talk about winter, why do we have our low pressure? You find it at the coast. That is where your A is. That is where it's pointing at, which means you've got your high pressure in the interior, then you've got low pressure at the coast. So there is what? Is a coastal, which is Y. It's a coastal low pressure. Coastal low pressure. It's not thermal. When you talk about the thermal low pressure, which means it's supposed to be inside and it's supposed to be during the summer. During summer. That's why we've got the thermal low in the interior. But here, this is winter because we have got our Kalahari, which is in the interior, which is dominant, which is more active. There's too much subsidence. There's a lot of sinking air in the interior, such that the wind that is blowing from one or either of the two high pressure systems, that is your South Atlantic and South Indian high, is not allowed to go above the escarpment. There's too much subsidence in the interior, okay? The R at B of the sketch represents, already you know, this is something, this is in winter. What comes to your mind is the berg wind, which means your answer there is what? Y. Okay. The winds in question 1.1.3 result in the shaded area at B being, obviously, the berg winds. They're associated with warm air. Of course, it's descending from the interior, descending down the mountain. Berg just simply means a mountain, okay? So it's descending. As it is descending, it is warmed up adiabatically, which means for every decrease of 100 meters, the temperature increased by 1 degree Celsius. Okay, 1 degree Celsius. Okay, so that's what is happening. So that's what it makes the 1.1.4 to be warmer, because it's warmed up adiabatically as it is descending down the mountain. For every decrease in 100 meters, the temperature increased by 1 degree. That's basically what we're talking about. So it becomes warmer. Okay, what we call the dry adiabatic lapse rate, it becomes warmer. Okay, bad winds conditions are usually associated with, obviously, when we talk about the bad winds, what are we talking about? Of course, the winds, sometimes these winds are very strong. Of course, when you talk about strong and gentle wind, of course, this has something to do with pressure gradient. Pressure gradient, it actually you can actually link it to wind speed. Okay, so what we are saying, that is where we have got wind speeds. Of course, if the wind speed is very high, it means we have got a steeper pressure gradient. If it's low, it means we have got a gentle, which means the winds are weaker. So in this instance, you know how we end up having, of course, our berg winds. Of course, the winds will be very strong. So that makes it what? Steep. Okay, there'll be strong winds. So this makes it what? Steep pressure gradient 1.1.5, which is Z. Okay. Then the weather conditions in question 1.1.5 may result in the 1.1.6. Okay, obviously it is the 1.1.6. It is the spread. It is the spread of veiled fires, not the development, but it is the spread of veiled fires. That is your 1.1.6. Let's move on to the next one. The bad wind conditions are enhanced by adiabatic. Obviously, remember we said that with a decrease in 100 meters, the temperature increased by 1 degree. So here it's heating, which is Z. It's heating, which is Z. Because as the winds are descending down the mountain, for every 100 meters, a decrease in height, the temperature increased by 1 degree. So it's heating there. Then 1.1.8, the weather station model that represents the weather station at B. Okay, let's go there. At B, of course, here we are saying now, obviously, this is going to be an offshore wind. This is going to be an offshore wind because it is blowing from the interior towards the what? From the continents towards the sea. So where it's coming from, it's warm and dry. It's warm and dry. So we are likely to have calm weather conditions. Okay, this is an offshore wind. We are likely to have calm weather conditions, which means we do not have any clouds. We are likely to have clear skies. We are likely to have clear skies. Let's check what we have here. So the one that is correct is Y, because obviously the temperature will be increasing by 1 degree with a decrease in 100 meters, which means the temperature, atmospheric temperature, is going to be very high. We are going to have clear skies. So what is correct there is your Y. Okay, let's move on to 1.2. Choose the correct word from those given in brackets. Write only the correct word next. Okay, what we are doing, there are options that are given there. There are 2 words that are given. So we choose the one that is correct. That's what is happening. Choose the correct word from those given in brackets. So we have got 2 options. The other one is correct, the other one is wrong. So we have to choose the correct option. Choose the correct word from those given in brackets. Write only the correct word next to the question numbers 1.2.1 to 1.2.7 in answer book, e.g. 1.2.8 cold. So this is the way you're supposed to answer the question. This is the way you're supposed to answer the question. Please do not write the whole sentence. Write only the number 1.2.1 and write the correct answer after numbering it. Okay, that's what is being asked. The central part of the city, obviously, central part of the city, of course, let me talk about maybe urban heat island. Temperature of the urban areas are higher than the surrounding areas. Of course, that's what makes what? The correct answer here is warmer. 1.2.1, which means it's warmer than the surrounding rural areas. This is the urban heat island concept that is being assessed here. That is, it is warmer than the surrounding rural areas. The dash, okay, this transpiration condensation process in vegetation lowers the temperature in raw areas. Okay, when they talk about the vegetation, obviously the transpiration, this is the loss of water through the leaves of the plants. Of course, the leaves of the plants, of course, this is what we call, that's transpiration. Condensation, of course, what happens when you talk about condensation? Warm air rises. As it rises, of course, what happens? It cools, it condenses, clouds form. But here we are talking about vegetation. So the correct answer here is transpiration, the loss of the water through the tree leaves. That is transpiration. So the correct answer is transpiration there. Then the wind speed is what? Higher in urban areas than rural areas, 1.2.3. How is the wind speed? I want you to think of the setup of the urban area. We have got buildings. Of course, they block the movement of the wind. As a result, sometimes it's channeled towards the streets. Of course, why? Because of the two buildings and the structures that we have. So that makes it lower, because in the rural areas, it's more open fields. So you'll see that the wind speed is higher in the rural area as compared to the urban area. So the correct answer there is lower. Okay, precipitation occurs more or less frequently in rural areas than in urban areas. Of course, I want you to think of 1.2.4. What happens within the urban areas? There is a lot of condensation in your clay. There's a lot of condensation in your clay. As a result, we have got more precipitation within the urban areas as compared to the rural. So when you compare in terms of high and low pressure, where do we have as our high pressure? Obviously, it's going to be the rural. Then the low pressure is going to be the urban, which means the wind will blow from the rural towards the what? The urban. Of course, what will happen? Of course, the rest is history. So precipitation occurs less, 1.2.4. It occurs less frequently in rural areas than in urban areas because of the concentration of urban nuclei. The temperatures in the urban areas are warmer than the surrounding area. What happens when it's warm? Of course, warm air is very light. What does it do? It rises. It rises, of course. This is what is resulting in the formation of our low pressure. Okay, cold air, of course, it's heavy, it sinks, of course. So here we are saying now precipitation is less frequent in the rural areas compared to the urban areas, but the most direct answer explanation is we have got a lot of condensation nuclei within the urban areas. So that results in the buildup of clouds. Then we have got rainfall, clouds of vertical extent like your cumulonimbus clouds, plus also think of what happens. Of course, when you talk about the air masses, it's a large body of air with a similar characteristics in terms of moisture content and also temperature. So as it is blowing from the rural toward the urban areas, of course, when it passes through the earth's surface, of course, the temperature and the moisture content is also transformed. But due to the fact that in the urban areas, it's warmer than the surrounding areas, warm air, it actually can absorb moisture as compared to cold air that is in the rural areas. That's why we have got more moisture there. The issue of us having warm air, number two, having a lot of condensation nuclei, which help in the build up, of course, the water droplet, they collect around those condensation nuclei, which result in the formation of what we call clouds of vertical extent, such as or cumulonimbus clouds or clouds in general. Then we have rainfall. So precipitation is less frequent in rural areas than in urban areas. Okay. Then the temperature in the city can be lowered by painting concrete. You want to lower the temperatures. So the moment you paint it dark, which means dark, it absorbs. It doesn't reflect. It absorbs. It doesn't reflect. Dark, it doesn't reflect. It absorbs. So the temperature of the city can be lowered. Please take note of these questions. Read to understand. Temperature of the city can be lowered, which means we can only lower it by painting what? Light. Because light colors, what do? They reflect, which means they do not absorb. That's how we can lower the temperature, of course. Then let's move on to 1.2.6. Refer to the sketch. If you've seen something here, this question, of course, this one, of course, we have answered this now from 1.2.1 to 1.2.5. But this question now is saying refer to the sketch below to answer the question 1.2.6, 1.2.7, which means for you to answer 1.2.6 and 1.2.7, you are referring to this sketch. Of course, pollution doom, of course, okay, that's the concept that is being assessed now. So we are saying the sketch represents a pollution doom during the, you can see that there's too much subsidence because of these arrows that are showing. Obviously, what comes to your mind is during the night. During the night, that is the correct answer then. Pollution doom, okay, layer pollution that is over the urban area. Of course, it is more, okay, during the night. You can see because of the too much subsidence that is taking place because of the arrows that are taking place there, that are being indicated or shown there. The height of the pollution to indicate the presence of, this is during the night, guys. We are referring this, we have said during the night. So there's no way that we are going to say more convectional currents. There's no way we are going to say more convectional currents. So the answer here is less because it's during the night. Okay, boys and girls, like I've said, I'm only covering question 1.1 and question 1.2 from the preparatory examination geography paper 1. Only looking at climate and weather. I've done question 1 and 1.1 and also question 1.2. Please go through these. Please, when you're answering, also read to understand. These questions are very easy if you apply those concepts that you have learned. Thank you so much. Good day.